Good morning. This is Kenneth and Heather with the Advancing Equity Coalition, and we're back for a new school year to give you updates on this, what's going to be an adventurous ride with the school board, especially over the next year. Heather, how are you doing? How's your summer been?
My summer's been amazing and busy. How about you?
Same, amazing and busy. And I mean, obviously, we've been able to talk a lot over the summer. Why don't you give us one quick highlight about what you were able to do this summer, what you got to do this summer?
Oh gosh. Well, you know what? I'm going to give one today that was so much fun. I got to be invited to an impromptu um, presentation of the Lucy Laney step team. And I was there for another reason, and they asked me if they could perform and practice, and they were phenomenal. So that it just was so amazing.
That's awesome. That's so great. I'm jealous. Yeah, I wish I would have
Oh,
been
you
able
can
to go.
see it. I can promise you if you stop by, they would show it again.
Well, that's cool. So, yeah, do you want to give us a quick rundown of last night's meeting? It was a relatively efficient meeting, but you want to give us a rundown of everything that happened?
Yeah, so the first thing that happened was we started off with some acknowledgments, some public acknowledgments of some really amazing community members. Coach Larry McKenzie retired, and he was acknowledged for his 30 years of fostering student athletes on the north side in Minneapolis public schools. His last place coaching was at North High. We also got to acknowledge Judy Brown, who was named as the Minnesota school social worker of the year. And it was really special to see her reaction to the acknowledgement. She got a little emotional, and it was beautiful. And then we had some public comment that went back and forth about different scenarios, about some labor things that we still need to kind of like figure out and understand a little bit more. Then we had our presentation. So it was a different format last night than what we're used to. It was interim superintendent Rochelle Cox. It was her first board meeting, and then we were introduced to a lot of members of her new cabinet. So there was a lot of change happening in the room last night, and we got an enrollment update. We had a little conversation about transportation. We had a quick conversation about academics, a quick update from really all of the departments. I would say a couple of things to sort of highlight. There was a conversation where we took a deeper dive into the fact that they're going to really focus on improving enrollment and retention in 3 pilot schools this year to see if they can create something that we could offer up district wide. And then, oh gosh, there was one more really important thing that I wanted to say. Do you remember
They
what it was?
Yeah, I mean, one of the other big presentations was focused on the strategic plan and like the leadership retreat. And so this cabinet had a leadership retreat, wanted to figure out how are we going to implement this strategic plan together in this year of transition and change for so many positions and so many folks. And yeah, they talked about, they also did a brief update on enrollment, and yeah, it was a lot.
Yeah, it was a lot. I really liked listening to lots of different people in one meeting. That kept my attention, so I liked it.
Yeah. Um, so I know I briefly just mentioned this, but one of the big, I would say the slide of the night last night for me, and for I think a lot of people who are really concerned about the future of Minneapolis public schools, is to get a sense, was to get this snapshot of our enrollment, right? And so right now in Minneapolis public schools, over the course of the last year, Minneapolis public schools lost over 3,300 students. And you can see this broken down by race. You can see that almost 2,000 of those students are African American. And so, this is obviously a huge issue for the district of continuing to lose students. And, the district is trying to figure out ways, as Heather mentioned, to identify the strategies that are going to really increase the recruitment and retention of our students um, going into the 25-26 school year, where they were hoping to see an increase of enrollment by about 10%. And so they're testing things now. There's a lot of conversation about the implementation of the climate and culture framework.
Hmm.
Obviously, this the strategic plan and the emphasis on academics. Lots of different things they're hoping will be tools to help recruit and retain students back into the district and have the district be at a healthier place. What I do want to always remind folks is Senior Officer Giap says that not enrollment alone is going to solve all of our budget issues. So, and having healthier enrollment is going to be a lot better for the district. Don't get me wrong, but it's not the only thing that has to be focused on. And so, again, as you all are thinking about your who you're going to elect for school board, be thinking about what are the steps, what are the tools, what are the ways that these school board members are going to help figure out how the district is going to have a more sustainable cost structure, and make sure you ask them about that, right? Like be direct, because the answer alone cannot just be increasing enrollment. And so, um, yeah, with that, you want to just go into our do better moment? Because mine actually relates to the slide of the night.
Yeah, do yours. Go
Okay.
ahead.
So I'll transition to mine. So my do better moment was, this slide really stood out to me, right? Like we are this isn't new for Minneapolis public schools. I want to be clear. Losing, that might be a little bit more students than the district usually loses, but having such a high percentage of the students that they lose be Black students, African American students, is not new. At the same time, I would have loved to see one question about what we know about why those students left. Last year was an unprecedented year. We were returning back from COVID. We had a strike. We had tons of leadership transitions. I would have loved to know. I would love to hear the administration's guess as to what were some of the contributing factors as to why that number was a little higher than we usually see, and why such a high percentage of African American students are leaving the district. Um, so yeah, I was a little disappointed by that. I was a little disappointed that the board didn't seem more engaged. And I know this was interim superintendent Cox's first meeting, and so they're probably trying to, especially with back to school in full swing, they're probably trying to just give her a moment to breathe, let their new format of the meeting sink in. But I hope we don't lose the criticality, right? Because we might all love interim superintendent Cox, right? And there's a lot of people that are supporting for her. Everyone wants to see her be successful, wants to see Minneapolis public schools be successful. Well, I shouldn't say everybody, but there's a lot of people in Minneapolis, including the AEC team, that want to see Minneapolis public schools be successful. At the same time, we can't not be critical of what's happening in the district, and we can't not be critical and ask critical questions about why something's happening and what's being done to solve and address those issues. And so I would have just loved to see our board members do that. I would love to see them model that for incoming board members, to how to be critical and also be respectful and professional, and like let's conduct meetings, because we've also seen meetings all year long, all for the last several years, kind of go all over the place depending on who's in the room. So anyway, that's my do better moment. I would just like to see a little bit more engagement from the board moving forward, on the presentation from the administration.
Yeah, and so like we held this tension when we were kind of debriefing the meeting, right? Where it's like, gosh, I really, for me as a parent in this district, and we've been through such hard things the last couple of years, I really found last night's meeting to be full of hope, and I liked having some new energy in the room and a new format, and sort of just getting a highlight from each of the folks. So for me, I think that these issues, there's a lot of times where MPS meetings are so heavy, and I'm a fan of the start of a new school year, and so like I felt like it was the a really amazing note for the night, but you know,
Yeah, and
I won't necessarily always feel that way.
I'm not saying that the new format necessarily dictated whether the board could be engaged or not, right?
Yeah,
What I will say though is that like having a new format shouldn't scare the board from being engaged,
totally.
right?
Yeah.
And so I just think that our students, only have 1 year in third grade, 1 year in fourth grade, right? And like they need our best. They need us to be asking critical questions. And the board members are supposed to represent us asking those critical questions.
Mm.
And so I want to see more engagement from the board in those discussions. And I think that, you know, it's really easy when you do the high level overviews of different departments and you're not going as deep into specific topics. Like it looks like that might be a format that they're moving forward with. Like it's great to have a wider picture of what's happening, and it's great to keep the board at a governance level, right? And also, let's then make sure the board is still being critical and having discussions about like, hey, these are some critical questions that the district is facing. Otherwise, the public is going to start to dictate the questions and the conversations that should be happening, whether it's, you know, a fire over here or a fire over there, right? Like, and while we want the district and the board to be responsive to those things, also we need to make sure that, you know, I thought Executive Director Hunter did a great job in like outlining for us how are we going to stay on track and monitor the implementation of the strategic plan and the key data points and when we can expect those key data points. I would just hope then the board interacts with that information once they receive it. So it's
Yeah,
a
because
little
we
nerdy of
we
me.
know.
It's the good governance nerd in me that that I appreciate and I enjoy. And so yeah, that's my do better moment.
We know this board's going to have hard conversations, and that's what you're really leaning into, right? Is that like we know that we can't we will have to have some long hard discussions.
Yeah.
So I'll just go. Yesterday, what I also heard in the meeting was that we were going to attempt to improve communications and community engagement. I think that this is a district that's been criticized for that heavily, and I appreciated that message. But also, while that was happening in the meeting, there were some real concerns, and families of students receiving special education services received robocalls and conflicting messages about what was going to be happening to their child and what school their child was going to be going to, and um, it caused a lot of folks to feel really confused. Do I have to move my child to a different school? Are they getting services? Can they get services here? What is happening? And so we know that shortages are going to be a problem of the year, and I hope that our district can communicate those shortages to parents clearly, and without confusion, because that, people, today we're saying, I don't know what am I supposed to do now? And we definitely don't want to be feeling that way. So we recognize that there are some things that are beyond our control, but folks need to be able to know some of those things and not receive two conflicting messages in the same day.
Yeah.
Um,
That's hard.
so, okay, what was your most valuable moment?
My most valuable moment was finally the board giving permission, directing whatever they have to do to allow Patrick Henry to change their school community name. We've seen students, community members, teachers, lots of different people from the Henry School community advocate for a name change, advocate for the support and resources from the district to change their name. And finally, it happened. It's super exciting. The name change has not taken place yet, but over the course of the year, we'll keep you updated. I just think that's incredible. This morning, I was listening to an NPR report about it, and I don't think we're really ready as a community and as a city to think about the footprint and the impact that like slavery has had on our
Mm,
country.
mm,
Um, like even the way that I heard the NPR, reporter talking about it, it was like, oh, Patrick Henry, who, had a few slaves. I was like, what are we, what are we doing here? Like Thomas Jefferson, the person who, the author of the Declaration of Independence, who also owned slaves, like he was a slave owner. Like he was racist. We know that this was wrong. It's one of the darkest marks in their anyway. I don't know if we're ready to grapple with it, but I think it's a huge step forward that we're saying like, yeah, we're as a school district, especially that we're willing to change at least the name so we don't have to commemorate slave owners, and only hold them in the light of like a forefather of this country or the writer or the author of the Declaration of Independence or a four-star general in some other racist war, where we're stealing land from indigenous people, right? Like what, anyway, I have a lot of feelings about it, but that's why I think it's so exciting that the district is finally supporting Patrick Henry and the Patrick Henry School community and changing their name. And hopefully they get an awesome new name like Las Estrellas or Ella Baker. That is beautiful to me.
Totally. And they get money for that. There's money set aside so that they don't have to go fundraise for new signage, which I also think like a really good plan has the way to pull it out. So that's great. Okay, my most valuable moment was that I am really excited that we have a K-5 math curriculum and that teachers are going to get professional development in it and that the students of Minneapolis Public Schools will have a new math curriculum this year. It's long overdue. I know that we have to go through a pilot and a process and all of that, but I am really excited for the students, for the elementary students of our district to have a consistent math experience that builds upon itself. I did hear that at some future meeting, the board is going to get to touch and understand and use the math manipulatives. And as a former first grade teacher, that makes me very excited and happy. So,
Yeah, I'm wondering if there's enough for like the audience in the school board
I
meeting
wish
to play with that.
I would love that because it was in teaching math that I really one of my first times teaching math and preparing math lessons that really forced me to understand math. You have to really understand math to teach it well. Which and so yeah, I hope that we have an opportunity to touch those manipulatives and to try them and to see and to experience what students experience and that parents can do that. Maybe we'll ask for that for conferences.
Well, this was great. We're back in it. We're back in
We're
the swing
back
of
in
things. Sorry if we rambled a little bit. We're still
it.
shaking the rust off. Um, but yeah, welcome back, MPS community. Another school year is right around the corner. Enjoy the remainder of your summer. We're back next week with another recap.
Yeah.
We're right back in it. So check us out on all the platforms, and thanks for listening.
Bye.